One of the first things I should do, and I'm supposed to do this every day, is give the usual disclaimer saying that we do not necessarily endorse all of the speakers because we don't even know what they're going to say. But I can tell you that we do agree with most of them or they wouldn't be here. But our motto is, we present them, you pick them. And it's up to you to use your pendulum or whatever to decide which ones you want to follow, which ones you want to buy from, which ones you want to continue any kind of association or purchase from or with. Our next, and we also, I also repeat every time I think of it, we are not adverse and we do not run away from controversy. You will find speakers here that probably do not agree with each other. As far as I know, some of them don't. So you get 2 or 3 different points of view and you can make your own choice. We still believe in freedom of choice. One of I should say, our next speaker is no stranger to controversy. Some people think he's crazy, some people think he's nuts, and some people think he's a fraud, and some people think he's a genius. Now it's up to you to decide. Free energy, or energy that's real cheap, is one of the greatest needs, as you certainly know, all of you, or you wouldn't be here, because you are the most aware group, some of the most aware and most exclusive group in the country. People say to me, I wish you had 1,000 people there. I wish you had 2,000 people there. My feeling is that the right people who should be here are here. And you don't necessarily have to have 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 people or 5 million to make it go. You know, the War of Independence was won with an enormously small amount of people that were committed to the cause. Well, anyway, enough of that. Our next speaker is Dennis Lee from Newfoundland, New Jersey. He's been working in this area of energy for many, many years. You first heard him at Global Sciences in 1989. He has now a lot of devices which will be offered in a workshop tonight, but he's here today to talk about some of the work and perhaps some of the dues that he's paid in the way of being incarcerated and all that stuff. And you've heard a lot of people who've done things for which they have been jailed or imprisoned for one reason or another. Anyway, without any further ado, this morning I want to introduce to you and I want you to welcome Dennis Lee to speak to you on his work and research back there in those labs in Newfoundland, New Jersey. Welcome him now, will you please? We'll get him wired for sound and he's ready to go.
Okay, is that 1, 2 then, I guess?
No. This one I think
This will do it. Okay. All right.
If I turn that one on.
Yeah, it is on. I think I'm all right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege to be here today. My name is Dennis Lee. I'm the Director of Research for Better World Technologies. We would prefer to have a better world than even a new world. The old one's fine as we just make it better. And what I want to talk to you about very briefly, I'm supposed to have until 9:30, so I'll cut myself a little bit short. I also want you to know that there is a workshop tonight at 7 o'clock, between 7 and 10. That workshop will be free, and that workshop is where we want to educate and make the public aware of what's really going on with energy technologies in our country. But we will also make a donation to Global Sciences Congress because we feel like these things it's necessary because these people have to incur expenses in order to put this together. And we want to keep greasing that machine because we want to keep that public awareness is probably the most important thing in the world, and we want to keep that going. But you probably would think that if somebody said they could take energy right out of the air and make electricity, and they could do that absolutely free, that person would be just absolutely crazy. I mean, what would you think of somebody who came along to you and said, I can give you all the electricity you want, totally for free from energy I take right out of the air, harmlessly, no pollution whatsoever. When you think you're just a little bit crazy? Yeah, well, we'll get to Nikola Tesla tonight also, because that's the most wonderful man that God has put on our planet in contemporary times. That's a genius. I'm not a genius, he is a genius. Anyway, what if somebody also said that they could take the same car that you're driving right now, the same identical car, don't have to buy a new car, don't have to buy a $50,000 electric car, stupidest idea I've ever heard in my entire life. You don't have to get a new engine or take anything out of that car and put a whole new engine back into that car, but you could say, take the same car that you're driving right now, the same one, and you could modify that car and it would never, ever, ever again, same car, stop at a gas station again as long as it had wheels. You'd think that guy's pretty crazy, wouldn't you? So if somebody claimed they could do that, well, geez, I'd want one. Anyway, so if somebody claimed they could do something like that, that would be pretty radical. That would be pretty crazy. How about if somebody said they could not only do cars, but run trucks and trains on the energy that they get from the air as they pass through the air, or fly airplanes on nothing but water? Take all the diesel out of an airplane and fill all the tanks with water and fly jet planes through the air on nothing but water. You know, when planes crash, you know why people die? Because of the fuel. Anyway, what if somebody said they had a explosive mesh, explosion-proof mesh, that they could line the inside compartment of an airplane with, and then you could fill every briefcase and every suitcase with a bomb and it wouldn't blow it up. So a plane could fly through the air and it wouldn't matter how many bombs were in the luggage compartment, you couldn't blow that plane up. As a matter of fact, you could line the gas tanks with them today, or the diesel tanks with them today, and you could take the airplane and dive it straight into the ground and screw it right into the ground. You hit the ground so hard. And then you could recover the airplane and all the fuel would still be on board, unexploded. What do you think if somebody said they could do something like that? You start thinking they're pretty crazy, wouldn't you? What about if somebody said that they had an anti-gravity machine and they could just overcome gravity harmlessly, simply, by merely doing nothing more than just flipping a switch, and they could rise up and clear the Earth's gravitational pull? I was recently in Cleveland because we're taking a tour of the whole entire United States of America right now with a truckload of devices. And I was in Cleveland doing a show there, and we went over to the brand new planetarium. And at the planetarium, we got to see this film from NASA, because their big headquarters up there in Cleveland. And it was so funny. I said at the top of this thing, you got seats going almost straight up in the air, and so everybody's sitting up, and it's like about a 75-degree angle there that you're sitting on. And whenever that rocket ship that they had went off, there were mountains of smoke, mountains of smoke. That smoke was like 30 or 40 stories high, big clouds of smoke, as they're burning all of this material to try to get the power to overcome the gravity of the Earth and take that little BB and catapult it out of the Earth's gravitational pull. It was unbelievable to me. I laughed so hard I almost fell down 4 flights of those stairs there. I was holding my sides laughing. Because isn't this crazy? Because if you could just merely take that same payload and gently rise it right out of the Earth's atmosphere and take it off into space with none of that theatrics at all. Now, if I know how to do that, don't you think NASA knows how to do that? And it doesn't take a genius to figure out why everybody's blowing off the great big cloud of smoke in order to overcome the Earth's gravitational pull. That's a show, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you appreciate it, because it's a show for you. This is theatrics, because you know what? If NASA instead used the technology that's now currently available and just gently rose those right off the platform into outer space, do you know that if they did that, what would you be thinking about the next airplane ride you took? You'd be going, what are we doing polluting the air with all of this stuff whenever we can rise a rocket ship right out into outer space and overcome the Earth's gravitational pull harmlessly. So you see, they have to do that because there's a little story going on and everybody is buying into the story. That's that we got to have fossil fuels. We got to have all of these things. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're putting gasoline in a car today, I want to tell you right now, there is no good reason why you're doing that. Now, there's a reason, there just is no good reason why you're doing that. If your electric company is taking coal and using it in a coal-fired plant, producing acid rain in order to give you electricity, ladies and gentlemen, there is no good reason why they're doing that. If your electric company is using radioactive isotopes so that they can produce electricity for you, ladies and gentlemen, there is no good reason why they're doing that. And there are very few benefits to that. The only one I can think of is our kids glow in the dark and we can find them easier. What would you say if some crazy individual said that they could put a brick in your house or build your house out of brick, and the bricks would be battery bricks, your ordinary, common, everyday battery brick. Holds 1 volt of electricity per brick, taking the energy right out of the ground itself. No mechanical devices at all necessary to produce electricity. This guy'd have to be pretty cuckoo, wouldn't he? You'd have to start thinking this guy was pretty crazy. What if somebody said that right now they had the capability, the technology of building homes, houses, dwellings, things for you to live in, that would last 2,000 years, never, ever, ever need painting, that you couldn't burn with an oxyacetylene torch, that you couldn't put a hole in with a high-powered rifle or a shotgun, that would be so strong and sturdy that they would withstand a hurricane, they would withstand a tornado. You could have a twister go right over the top of it and it wouldn't even move. That construction, not only would you never ever have to paint it, but there'd be no damage to it at all and it would last pretty much forever, at least for you. 20, 30, 40 generations of your family could live in it, and it would cost you far, far, far less than any type of construction today, and could be made to look like anything. You want it to look like a clapboard wood house? Fine, no problem. Want it to look like a brick home? Fine, no problem. Ladies and gentlemen, if somebody said they could do that, they'd have to be pretty crazy. Well, I'm pretty crazy, and everybody knows I'm pretty crazy, but I'll tell you something else. How about this? If somebody said that they had a way to treat plants, any plants, doesn't matter what they are. They can be wheat, they can be corn, they can be vegetables, they can just be pretty flowers. And make those plants grow 3 times the amount of crops in the same year that they normally grow. Make those crops be at least 2 to 3 times as big as they ever were before, on those 3 times as many crops as you get in a year. And not only be able to give you a crop like an ear of corn that's 2 feet long, but also that ear of corn that is so juicy and so succulent it's just like the other one, but it has more nutritional value than the other one does. I don't know, maybe you're not into world hunger. Maybe you really don't care if we feed all the people in the world. But I think that that should be all the list of things that I've just said to you, and it goes on and on and on, by the way. It'd take me all day to list things that I'd like to claim to you. That list of things I think would be pretty important on my agenda if I was you. And since I am you, it's been very high on my agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, the only problem is we don't know what we don't know, and we don't know that we don't know it. The problem, ladies and gentlemen, is ignorance. It is not stupidity, although there is a lot of that going around. It's ignorance. We're not aware. We don't know. Like it says in the Bible, how will they know if you don't tell them? And so, I don't know. I guess prophets always have a rough time. Somebody out there screaming and talking about something that's a little antithetical to the normal thought pattern. always has a tough time. But let's reason here together for a minute, because the fact of the matter is those things do exist. And way, way, way more exists. And I'm going to show you evidence of that tonight at 7 o'clock. And I'd love to have as many people come out and see it as I can, but we're showing it all across America in 34 cities, and we are waking this country up, ladies and gentlemen. The only thing wrong with our free enterprise system in America is we don't have one. That's the only thing wrong with it. Used to have a competitive society, then the competitors got so good at competing, nobody can compete against them, and that's it. Somewhere along that line, there has to be an equalizer. Do you know what that equalizer is in our country? That equalizer is God. I don't care what you call that. I don't care what your concept of it is. That's the equalizer. The equalizer is God. God working with man. I believe, ladies and gentlemen, that every ounce of creativity in the world today comes from the same source. Every ounce of creativity comes from God. It isn't man. You know why it isn't man? Because if it's man, it would have already been here. We're here. That's God trying to break through to that hardest substance in the world to penetrate, 1/4 inch of human skull. That's man talking to an individual and saying, this is a gift for you, a gift to a man. But ladies and gentlemen, make no mistake about it. It is not a gift to a man for a man. It is a gift to a man for mankind. When God gives something to somebody in Revelation, it's because He wants that to go to the people. And we have an enemy. We have a real enemy. The enemy we have is yesterday. That's the enemy. Tomorrow has a hard time getting around whenever there's such a strong yesterday. And the proponents and the builders of yesterday are always the biggest enemy of tomorrow. We can't move on. We can't go. We get frozen in time. You know why? Because somebody puts a whole bunch of money on yesterday and doesn't want to get on to tomorrow until he gets as much back out of yesterday as he possibly can. So you and I, ladies and gentlemen, have to wait for somebody to pick up enough money that we can move on. Sometimes I see we ought to just give everybody that built yesterday an extra reward from tomorrow so we can get on with it. Pay these people so they'll let us go so we can go on into the next technology. Well, they're hard to overcome, folks. There's a movie out there now called Chain Reaction. If you want to go see Chain Reaction, you can go see Chain Reaction. That's a movie about somebody that came up with the technology in the hydrogen area. Well, let me tell you something, folks. That's about a man. That's about a man I know. That's about a man named Professor Yule Brown. That movie, the man in that movie looks just like Professor Yule Brown. And isn't this amazing? He's working with somebody from China. And that is, by the way, Professor Yule Brown. And he's working on a hydrogen process. Probably the most genius technology that's ever happened in the hydrogen area came from Professor Yule Brown. I'm going to show you some things tonight, folks. I'm going to show you some things tonight, I just delight in it, that are impossible. And you're going to come, and if you're technical, you're going to say, that's impossible. That's why I'm going to show you tonight the things that I'm showing you, because I'd like you to see the impossible. You go to a physicist and you say to a physicist, hello, Mr. Physicist, is this possible? Is it possible to make free electricity from air? And you know what the physicist is going to tell you? That's impossible. You know why? Because if he doesn't, then I'd like you to say, then why in the world aren't you doing it? If he knew how to do it, he'd be doing it. Obviously, he can't do it. You go to people and you ask them, technical people, and you ask them, is this possible? And when they say no, it is not, that is because they are giving you the benefit of all of the knowledge they have about what exists already. Hey, think about it. In 1889, if you'd have gone to somebody and said, is electricity possible? What would they have said? Just electricity. Forget free electricity. What would they have told you? It's impossible. Is a television set possible? No, that's impossible. A telephone, talking to somebody in another part of the world. instantaneously at the same time. Impossible. Spaceships going out there in the moon and stuff. Are you crazy? That's impossible. Hey, you go back a little bit further in time, and you would have been talking to somebody who actually knew everything there was to know about physics and thought you were going to fall off the end of the earth if you went too far. So folks, it's like we really don't need to try to get people who are one thing to be something else. All we're really doing when we go to a physicist and say, can we do this, is we're trying to take the responsibility that we have for our own lives and ourselves and put that off on someone else and let them give us an excuse not to go any further with it. Isn't that the truth? That is the truth. And so, in essence, why don't we then instead start accepting our responsibility and thinking for ourselves? Because these people don't have the answers, ladies and gentlemen. They don't have the answers. Most of them don't even have the questions. Anyway, let me tell you about something else. Let me tell you about something you already know something about. Let me tell you about the barrier. The big barrier, the invisible shield, the impenetrable shield. It stands between me and you. That shield is hard to penetrate, folks, but there are people out here with technologies that would shake you up, that would shock you. People out here with technologies that could so revolutionize your world you wouldn't even recognize the world that you're living in. Anybody here believe in UFOs? Got a few believers in UFOs? You know what? I believe in IFOs. You know what IFOs are? Identifiable flying objects. I can tell you what a lot of them things flying around out there are. A lot of them are made by your government just north of Las Vegas. The United States government makes flying saucers. Hello, the United States government makes flying saucers. You know who else does? Friends of mine do. You know who else is about to? I'm about to. Professor John R. Searle from London discovered how to do this a long time ago. Guess how old he was whenever he learned how to make a flying saucer? Didn't know that's what he knew. He was 16 years old. Wait a minute. Hold it, hold the form. 16 years old? Somebody 16 years old knows how to make a flying saucer? Yeah, think about this. I don't know if you believe in the Bible or not, and it's okay if you don't. And if you do, then that's good too. But if the story in the Bible is true about David and Goliath, who did God use to take Goliath down? He rise up a bigger giant out of the earth than the one that was standing there? No. Took a 16-year-old boy, or was he 13, put a little rock inside of a little sling, threw it around his head. Next thing you know, that giant saw it was dust. And so, who did God reveal that to? Who did God reveal the help or the vision that he could do that to? Reveal it to a little shepherd boy, a nobody. Folks, we got to stop thinking that if somebody's doing something, they got to have credentials. Look at me. This is a fact. There's not a man in this room or woman in this room, a person in this room that can deny the fact that I'm going to tell you right now. It has been so well documented, so well proven, that there's probably very few facts that are more well documented or proven than this. Ladies and gentlemen, I developed the most efficient heat pump in the world. I developed the most efficient heating system in the entire world. I did that already. I've done that. I don't have to wonder, gee, can I convince them of that? I've proven that in court twice with my life on the line. Ladies and gentlemen, that's pretty amazing because who builds heat pumps? General Electric, Westinghouse, Borg Warner, Carrier, Trane. These are some pretty impressive names, aren't they? Huge companies, Fortune 500 companies. Now, am I standing here before you telling you that I built something that's almost 3 times as good as anything General Electric built in the heat pump area? Ladies and gentlemen, yes, I am. I sure as the world am. Am I saying I built something 3 times as good as what these guys with $100 million a year think tanks built? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I did that. Thank you. And I'm just very quickly going to give you my credentials. I've never had a refrigeration course in my entire life. I've never had an advanced science course or mathematics course in my entire life. I flunked mathematics in high school. Now wait a minute, something's wrong with that picture, isn't it? If I built something that's 3 times as good as anything they built with their $100 million a year think tanks and all their brainiacs, what's wrong with this picture here? I'll tell you what's wrong with the picture. They already knew about it, they just didn't want to bring it out. I wasn't a member of the good old boy team, and so I brought it out. Ladies and gentlemen, actually, if you give anybody so much control over your life that you give them credibility over all areas of your life, then you surrender yourself to that person and become that person's slave. And the United States of America, this country is not supposed to be the land of the slaves, is it? No. The land of the slaves? Is that how the song goes? I don't think so. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is time. It is time that we accept the responsibility that each and every one of us have. And so the first thing we have to do is become informed, because you can't go running out there saying something you don't even know what you're talking about. The second thing we have to do is, once we have become informed, we have to have a plan. Do you know that in our country right now, the only thing wrong, in my opinion, of America is that there are very few Americans left. Just aren't very many Americans left in the country. Most of them are gone. They've all surrendered their rights and surrendered their freedom and surrendered their liberty to somebody else. Mainly because they don't want to take responsibility for their rights, take responsibility for their freedom, or take responsibility for their liberty. But why did they do that? I'll tell you why. Because they don't have a plan. There's no plan. There's no plan. People turn around to us and they say, well, things are wrong with our country. And we say, okay, tell me about it. And then somebody will tell you about it. This is wrong with the country. That's wrong with the country. The Federal Reserve and all these other things. And you say, okay, wow, that's amazing. Gosh, now I'm informed. Now I'm an informed guy with no plan. Because nobody tells me how to change it. They just tell me what's wrong with it. Then we form groups called patriots. Some of them are radical, most of them aren't. Just about every patriot that I'm connected to is in no way, shape, manner, or form radical, isn't in any way violent, isn't looking to do damage to anything or anybody. Now there are some that are, but you know, we're people. But you see, the problem is there gets to be leadership because there's a market. Whenever you create an interest in something, that becomes a market. Somebody can run in there, sell some books to them, sell some tapes to them, talk to them, get them all fired up, tell everybody what the problem is. But ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you what's missing. There ain't no plan. There's no, who has a plan for changing it, for turning it around? Well, I want to tell you, we call our show America's Declaration of Energy Independence. And there is a plan. And the thing I'm most proud of isn't even the technology. The thing I'm most proud of is tonight at 7 o'clock, until we're done, we're going to show you the problem, we're going to show you the solution, and then we're going to give you a plan. We're going to give you a plan for turning this thing around. We're going to give you a plan for stopping the suppression of technology in the United States of America and throughout probably the entire world. Because when it goes here, it goes everywhere. We're going to give you a plan. And identifying the problem is a part of it, but it's not all of it. Now, so we're going to show you what you can do to make this right. Now, the last show that we're having, we're going to have 34 shows across the United States of America in 34 cities, and the last show that we're having is going to be in Philadelphia. It's funny because we never plan any of this stuff, but you see, guess where the plan comes from? God has a plan. God has a plan. Even dummies like us, we finally walk along and we stumble into the plan. If you go down the road and you hear me on a CB radio, you'll hear my call sign. It's Mr. Magoo. I came by that honestly. We stumble into these plans. People sit and say, man, how did you think of all of this stuff? And I look at them kind of like, I don't know. I don't have time to tell you about all of this stuff, but I didn't think of any of this stuff. God has a plan. God, that's God's plan. And the plan, by the way, we ended our tour for no reason other than that was a nice place to end it in Philadelphia when we started on the tour. And the first show that we did doesn't look anything at all like the show we just did 2 days ago in Omaha. Doesn't look anything like it. That show has changed and changed and changed and changed and changed. And you know what? Right now it's a whole different show. And it probably won't look like the show we get in California or the one we get in Amarillo, Texas, because it keeps improving and improving as we go across the country. More and more inventors are coming to us and saying, hey, man, you guys are going to do this thing. Here's my invention. Let's go. I was scared until you guys started doing this stuff. And so it's just growing. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an avalanche. It's just growing like a great big old snowball. But you see, in order to start that, you got to start. You got to go. Now, we didn't know, we didn't even think about the fact that the Declaration of Independence was signed in Philadelphia. We didn't think about that. But the last show we had was in Philadelphia. And guess what we're doing? America's Declaration of Energy Independence is going to happen in Philadelphia. Because the last show is there, and that's where we are officially going to declare America's independence. And ladies and gentlemen, after September 23rd at Philadelphia, at that last show that we're doing, and if anybody wants to be there, by all means be there, because I assure you, it's going to become some sort of part of history. It's either going to be the place where they got Jesse James, or it's going to be the place where it all started. But on the 23rd of September, we are going to have America's Declaration of Energy Independence. And that wasn't anything that we had planned on, but that's something that has evolved. And we're going to declare independence in that place, and we're going to stop technology suppression. And from that time on, ladies and gentlemen, on the 24th of September, you can start having your car modified to run with no gasoline in it. People have said to me, okay, hotshot, when are you going to bring all these products out to market? We'll come out tonight and see that half of them are already on the market. Things that will revolutionize the world are already on the market. We're going across America, turning on the lights. We have a national dealership of 2,000 dealers in the United States of America. We have built that up. 2 years ago, I was in prison, walked out of a prison. I went to prison, and I had never even been convicted of the crime I was in there for. Didn't have a trial, didn't have a conviction, just went to prison. That was a little shocking for me to see that this country does that. That was a real revelation for me. But when I walked out of prison, I realized why I was in prison. I wasn't put there by a man, I was put there by God. Put there by God because it was the quietest time I ever had lots of time to think and plan. Out here, everybody's always bugging me and stuff, and I don't get anything done. It was probably the best 2 years that I've spent in my life anywhere as far as productivity is concerned. 17 of these inventions came out of my stay in prison. History will show the worst thing those people ever could have done was throw me in that stupid prison. And I'll tell you what, while I was in that prison, it was really incredible. But ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you something, and I really mean this. My body has been in a prison, but my heart and my mind have never, ever, ever walked inside of a prison. My soul has never been in prison. But people in this country who will willingly allow people to relieve them of all of their rights as free people and all of their rights and all of their liberty, those people, ladies and gentlemen, are walking around in a prison. And it's just a matter of time before all of the things, all of their surroundings look just like a prison. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know about you, but I kind of enjoyed my stay in that prison because I had a lot of time to think and everything, but I would rather that we just do away with that type of thing in this country. Now, there was a man named Ewell Brown, and I want to say something about him to this crowd in case you don't come tonight. This man is probably the most important man in America. It isn't me. Probably the most important man in America is Ewell Brown, Professor Ewell Brown. Professor Ewell Brown has done some pretty phenomenal things. I'm going to show you some of them tonight. I'm going to demonstrate some of his technologies to you tonight. Matter of fact, I got a partnership relationship with Professor Ewell Brown. But let me tell you something. Professor Ewell Brown, I just want to make this point to you and then I'm going to quit. Professor Ewell Brown grew up in Bulgaria. He's from Russia. Professor Ewell Brown in Bulgaria wound up spending 7.5 years in a Russian gulag. 7.5 years in a Russian gulag. That wasn't too fun. All the time that Professor Brown was in a Russian gulag, he was continually saying to himself, gosh, if I could just get to America. If I could just be in that place, that land of liberty. Because, ladies and gentlemen, you know what our #1 export is in America? Our #1 export in America is liberty. That's what we export. We export it to the whole world. The whole world envies us. 7.5 years in the Russian gulag, and then he escaped, ladies and gentlemen. It was hard, but he escaped to Turkey. When he got to Turkey, he didn't have any papers, so he spent 3.5 years in a Turkish prison. All the time he was in the Turkish prison, he was saying, boy, if I could just get to America. Then he finally got out of that and got through Australia and then also through China and wound up finding his way into, guess where? His dream. America. The man finally made it to America. 5 years ago, folks, he came to our country. He came here because why? He wanted to do something. It was a dream. This is a place where he would be free. This is a place where he'd have liberty, a place where he'd be able to express himself, a place where he'd be able to develop his technologies freely and openly, a place where people would appreciate him for what he is. Boy, was that a shock. Guess what we do to our inventors? We fry our inventors, ladies and gentlemen, because these people are trying to go beyond that free enterprise concept into the reality of a non-free enterprise world that we happen to live in today, where mega corporations crush inventors like bugs. And they utilize all of their power with all of the people who have your power, who you gave it to. They utilize that political system. They use those oxymorons, because that's what an honest politician is. If that ain't an oxymoron, I don't know what an oxymoron is. An honest politician. They use those people to crush people like Ewell Brown, people like inventors trying to reach you. They use that media, make doggone sure you never hear about any of this stuff. I'll tell you a story about the Wright brothers someday, and you can find out how long it took the Wright brothers to prove they could fly in this country. You thought they just went out and flew and that was it. 5 years they flew in this country before anybody would ever acknowledge that they were flying. And it was the people that forced the media to cover the story. Anyway, Ewell Brown got here, and guess what he had the capability of doing? He had the capability of taking care of the one problem that scared me to death and I had no answer for. I could solve every form of pollution in the world today, as I'm going to show you tonight. But there was one I couldn't solve. And that was, how do we get rid of the spent radioactive rods in a nuclear power plant safely? And ladies and gentlemen, there's no physicist in the world today that can answer that question honestly. None. Not even one. And it's really kind of scary to me that people would go out and expose us to this danger and would go out and build power plants with absolutely no idea how to decommission a power plant. Do you know that not one person knew how to decommission a power plant when they built them? Not one. How do you shut them off? Well, we don't know, but somebody will figure it out before 20 or 30 years from now we have to shut them off. Folks, we're approaching the time we have to shut them off. Mayor of New York figured it out. He said, just shut them off. Let me tell you, the governor of New York, let me tell you something. Yul Brown is probably the most important man to your life. Yul Brown knows how to completely neutralize radioactive waste. Now, I know that Yul Brown knows how to do that because I saw Yul Brown do that. And I also intellectually know how Yul Brown does that. And you know what our country did to Yul Brown? Man, we gave him the deluxe. We slid him down the big slide. It was supposed to end in the furnace, but we got him out of there before it hit the furnace. I don't mean literally a slide. I mean the slide of, we tried to go, DOE came to him, went through all of his stuff, couldn't find anything wrong with anything, and then ignored him. That's normal. Then, of course, the government sent down some top scientists. They quizzed him and quizzed him and quizzed him and then got mad at him because he wouldn't help them build an atom bomb. Our big societies like the Tesla Society, which, by the way, I have absolutely no respect for the Tesla Society. I have a tremendous amount of respect for Nikola Tesla, one of the most wonderful men that ever lived. I would give a year of my life to have a 10-minute, have a one-day conversation with Nikola. Don't want to sell myself that cheap. One-day conversation, 1 year of my life. But the Tesla Society isn't about Nikola Tesla, in my opinion. It's a bunch of grave robbers that took the name of a wonderful man and went out and tried to create a society around it. Now, that's just my opinion. I just wanted to give my commercial announcement for the Tesla Society while I'm here. Hey, I like you if you're for us. I like you if you're against us. But I can't stand you if you're trying to act like you're for us and you're actually against us. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, all I want to say in closing is, we're there at 7 o'clock tonight. It's free to you. We will ourselves take the responsibility upon ourselves to take care of the Global Sciences Congress because we admire what they're doing here. And if you'd like to be my guest and come out, we will try to shock you. Okay? Love to see every one of you out there tonight. It's 7 o'clock here, right? It's 7 o'clock. 7 p.m. Right on here.
Here on this stage. Will it be taped? Yes. It has been. We taped it in Tampa, so we can tape it here.
I'm going to have to take time.
Now, I want to explain. He reminded me of something when he talked about prison. First thought was, if you have never been arrested, you haven't lived, folks. You just haven't. But a lot of you have asked off and on about Russbacher. You remember when Ray Allen Russbacher was here 2 or 3 years ago? That is one of the most bizarre stories that you've ever heard, and I just got it 2 weeks ago. Her husband was finally released from prison on the condition that he would go to Austria and stay there the rest of his life, because that's his home country, which he agreed to do. Then, however, there was a charge trumped up on him on another bizarre thing called, I think, credit card fraud or something, and he was convicted in this country for doing that, for which he is now serving time in prison in Austria. Figure that one out. That's, I think, something that has to do with GATT, NAFTA, and all this international New World Order stuff. I don't understand it, but that's what's happening, and he is due to be released in December. He spent his sentence was 2 years. All right, now the workshop policy, you've heard about his. There will be other workshops tonight, and I want to explain that to you so you can do whatever you want to do about it during the rest of the day. The workshop sign-up sheets are outside. You can sign up.